If you're a part of DC Comics leadership that decided we shouldn't publish Justice League for 2 years, you need to be part of the solution by exiting. If you're part of the DC leadership that decided, let's pause our new initiative for 3 months and do Night Terrors and not release a single ongoing book, you need to be removed for malpractice, for incompetence, for stupidity. If you greenlit Gotham War, you need to be exiting out the door. It definitely pains me to say this as a DC Comics fan. I like DC much more than I like Marvel. I mean, I like Marvel, but I love DC Comics and heroes. But they are in one of the most dangerous places I've seen DC Comics in a very long time. I was recently looking at the ICV2.com reporting as far as comic book sales, but graphic novel sales as well for April of 2024, and they just paint the most bleak picture possible for DC Comics. And I was like, my goodness, it's almost hard to get my head around because Marvel is really bad right now. It's not very good. It is middling at best. That's the best you can expect from Marvel. Whereas DC, Superman's been good. Green Lantern's been good. There's some good titles over there at DC Comics, but they're missing some really important characters, and they just done so many stupid ideas over the past few years, and none of them have worked out. Remember when they killed off the Justice League? We haven't had a freaking Justice League comic in over 2 years just so we could do Dark Crisis on Infinite Earths, which was a sales failure. When we did that, we go into Dawn of DC, a new initiative. They launched Dawn of DC with the Lazarus Planet event, a sales failure. Then a few months into Dawn of DC, they paused all their new comic books to do Night Terrors, a shared nightmare-based comic book event from DC. I still don't get the concept behind that one. That was a sales failure, and actually told people, maybe you shouldn't keep reading Green Arrow. Maybe you shouldn't keep reading Superman. Maybe you shouldn't keep reading Green Lantern at this time. And then we even came back after that with Gotham War, a Catwoman Batman team-up crossover event series that was just laughable. It was actually somehow worse than all of it. It was worse than frickin' Night Terrors, just as far as the quality. I guess Night Terrors is worse because it was so big. I think that was like 50 comic books, whereas I believe Gotham War was probably more like 6 or something like that, but it was 6 too many. It was so bad. And none of this stuff is resonating with people. All it's done is drive DC Comics fans off, and the sales are terrible. They're not just in comic books, but they're not even competing in graphic novels anywhere, where they basically have pantsed Marvel for decades upon decades, although they have been getting owned by Scholastic and Manga and some other publishers for a long time there as well. It's shocking. I think 15 years ago, DC was the dominant name in American graphic novel sales and book channels, and they're nowhere to be seen anymore. It's absolutely crazy what DC Comics have done, but we are coming down to the end of Dawn of DC, and we still haven't seen a lot of key superheroes even return during this era. The Dawn of DC is coming to an end this summer. After 18 months as DC's comic book line heads into its absolute power era, Justice League, Supergirl, and Aquaman didn't get a Dawn of DC revival. And they're not alone. When it comes to some of DC's biggest properties, they're still absent from the company's publishing line after more than a year. Is this part of a plan to allow fans to let absence make the heart grow fonder, or have some things just been left in the background for reasons unknown? Not having Justice League for 25 months is still jaw-dropping me. I cannot believe they really thought they could just not have a Justice League title. DC has some A-list characters, certainly Batman, and certainly Superman. Well, those would be the two big ones. And then the two titles that are right below that typically over the years have been Flash and have been Justice League. Flash basically was destroyed sight unseen. Oh my goodness, fucking Tom King, Heroes in Crisis. And that character languished and there was no interest in Flash. They actually got some interest in the character from Jeremy Adams. If you didn't know this, Flash was creeping into like the top 50 comic book rankings at the end of his Flash run, but by then they'd already announced that they were kicking him off the book to bring in Cy Spurrier to do something completely, totally different with the book that was going to alienate Wally West fans even more. Just absolutely shocking stuff. But nothing is more shocking than not having a Justice League title. No wonder DC comic sales are flat. They actually killed off one of their actual flagship books. I know a lot of people like to talk about it's the Trinity, it's Batman, it's Superman, it's Wonder Woman. Yes, as far as cultural relevance, it is the Trinity. Batman, Superman, is Wonder Woman. But when it comes to sales, Wonder Woman is like a C-list character, maybe sometimes a B-list character, not exactly blowing the doors off when it comes to sales. Flash and Justice League have been much better sellers over the years. And I don't know if they just couldn't find someone that they felt would be right on a Justice League book, or that they really thought getting the Titans over under Tom Taylor coming out of Dark Crisis on Infinite Earths, or was it Night Terrors? I think it's Dark Crisis on Infinite Earths, was the most important priority for DC Comics. It's time to get the Titans over as the new Justice League. Even though when they returned, everyone was just like, and when I say everyone, I'm talking about the characters, Superman's like, you know what? I think our time is done. It's time to hand the baton over to old Dick Grayson in the Titans. Batman's like, yeah, the Justice League really screwed this one. Let's hand it over to the Titans. And you never knew why. There was still no explainable reason for their breakup. But every time there's a big event, even the Titans Beast World event, there's the fucking Justice League just saying that they're not the Justice League because the Titans are the more important team. They're more powerful now. Even though the Titans, until Beast World, have been relegating to planting trees and taking a stand for the environment in South America and stupid shit like that. Oh, it's such a terrible book. And when you look at the sales, shockingly, or not shockingly, Titans is nowhere to be seen, whereas if you had a Justice League title, it would most certainly be in the top 50 and perhaps even in the top 20. But DC Comics going over 24 months without a Justice League title is pure and utter malpractice on the part of Jim Lee and the brain trust working around him. I'm talking about you, Marie Javins. A lot of real smart people working at DC Comics that really figured out how to destroy the brand. What is particularly surprising about this is that two of the above titles, Supergirl and Aquaman, have active movie interest attached in the past 12 months. Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom was only released in December 2023, and yet there was no Aquaman Dawn of DC title. Similarly, Supergirl is one of the projects mentioned as being developed for the new DCU by James Gunn, and yet she's been relegated to supporting cast of Action Comics for the past year plus. It's not surprising that there's not a Supergirl book. Supergirl doesn't normally have an ongoing series. She does miniseries sometimes, but the character literally is a copy of a copy and is so unimportant that she's never actually been a seller. It doesn't matter that in 4 years they're going to remake True Grit as Supergirl, which was a stolen idea by Tom King, and they're going to act like it was a new idea. Nobody really cares about Supergirl. Not that I'm saying that Kara Zor-El doesn't have fans or whatever. There are certainly fans of Supergirl. There just aren't enough fans to support an ongoing solo title. It's not surprising that there hasn't been a Supergirl title. There never is. They even put like Hawkman on the list. Hawkman literally only comes back for freaking miniseries. I wish there was more Hawkman, but he's not exactly a character that's always in print or anything like that. But Aquaman certainly is. You know, I don't know that they needed to have a series specifically because Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom was coming out, but you would have expected them to have something. Aquaman is normally, you know, one of the pillars of DC Comics. Maybe not the best seller, probably doesn't sell as well as Green Lantern or Flash or a lot of the other characters, but there's normally an Aquaman ongoing series. And it was just like the weirdest thing. All of a sudden, in the Aquaman series, you had Jackson Hyde show up, and then you did some weird miniseries, and then it was Aquaman. And what had been said for a long, long time was that Arthur Curry was going to retire as Aquaman and hand over the mantle to Jackson Hyde because they wanted more LGBTQ representation. Where have you heard that blowing up in people's faces? And somehow along the way, they actually killed Aquaman sales, which were already bad to begin with, which had already been hurt when they threw Kelly Sue DeConnick on the book just unexpectedly. You know, Aquaman was a pretty decent selling book under Dan Abnett. The sales basically dropped by, I think, 20% immediately upon Kelly Sue DeConnick arriving, and they just went down and down and down, and they're like, well, we need to put Jackson Hyde in there. Arthur Curry's old news. We need more representation. And once people realized that they were getting rid of Aquaman and just replacing him with diversity Aquaman, it actually dried up interest even more, which I didn't think was really all that possible. But leave it to DC Comics to find a way to destroy something that wasn't doing great to begin with. It's just, my goodness. DC they're just fucking dumb. And this is what happens. Once you make all these terrible decisions, once you don't publish Justice League for 24 months, once you announce we're replacing Arthur Curry as Aquaman with Jackson Hyde so he can become, I guess, the stay-in daddy for his daughter or whatever, and once you make all these stupid decisions over the years, people stop having faith in the brand, and they gave up on DC Comics, and that's how we get to April 2024 comic sales rankings, courtesy of ICV2.com, via comic shops using Comics Hub. In April, DC Comics only had 9 comics in the top 50 sales list from ICV2, a miserable 18%. Not a single DC issue made it into the top 20. Of DC's 9 comics in the top 50, 6 are starring Batman or a Batman associate, and 3 star Superman. And this trend isn't new. It's only getting worse and worse as the months go on. How can anyone at DC Comics justify not having a Justice League comic at this point? DC Comics destroyed interest in The Flash. They've killed every brand but Batman and Superman at this point. 2 freaking Energon Universe projects in the top 20, but not a single DC Comics project. And yes, Energon is new, and Transformers is certainly a brand name, and G.I. Joe is certainly a brand name. There are 4 books in the Energon universe. 2 of them are in the top 20. I think one of them is in the top 50, and I don't think Void Rivals is in there, but basically a 75% hit rate compared to DC being probably under 20%. Absolutely embarrassing on the part of DC Comics. And yes, typically there would be one DC book in the top 10 at least, and probably top 5, and that would be Batman. But these sales did start on like the 7th, I guess, of April or something. It didn't include the very opening couple of days of the month, which included Batman. I think it's 46. Otherwise, Batman would have been in the top 5. But other than that, it's still embarrassing that they don't have any other titles, any interest in any other characters besides Superman at this point. It is ridiculous that they would continue down this path and just keep creating miniseries after miniseries after miniseries for like autistic 30-year-old cat ladies, but not actually make comic books aimed at comic book fans. It's the most fucking mind-numbingly stupid thing I've ever seen in my life, but it is also the most DC Comics thing I've ever seen in the last 5 years. Let's just follow Marvel Comics down this path to destruction, even though Marvel are hemorrhaging off readers, and they can actually lose more than us, and not really feel it. And basically, DC or DOA at this point, they really don't have a big presence anymore. They're not a big-time brand right now, and unfortunately, there's not a lot of great comic books to really be enjoying. Superman is great. I'm enjoying House of Brainiac. Green Lantern's been really good, although the Joe Bowen stuff is just... I don't even know what Jeremy Adams was thinking on that one, but it's hard to find in continuity great DC stories. If you want to find something good, go read Batman Offworld. It's a lot of fun. You'll enjoy that one as well. Now, normally, DC Comics have dominated Marvel Comics in graphic novel sales, but that was not the case in April of 2024. To add insult to injury, Marvel Comics even owned DC in graphic novel sales in April. DC didn't put a single title in the top 20. Perennial sellers like Watchmen, Dark Knight Returns, All-Star Superman, Batman Court of Owls that have been propping DC graphic novel sales up for years are nowhere to be found. Even IDW had 3 books make the top 20, led by TMNT The Last Ronin. The worst-run comic publisher in America was able to accidentally create a successful modern story, something DC Comics cannot do right now. And as I said earlier, think about all the stuff that DC Comics have been doing over the past 18 months that are supposed to be big deals. Dark Crisis on Infinite Earths, nowhere to be found. Where's Night Terrors? Where's Lazarus Planet? Where's the Gotham War trade paperback sales? There are no sales for any of that stuff because there's no interest. DC Comics, by following the Marvel method, have basically fucked up their entire line, and now they're going to have to reboot it again with, guess what? Another event, Absolute Power. And I just wonder, based on DC's recent track record, if within the first few months of getting to whatever this new era is going to be called, they do another event, and then another event, and an endless string of nauseating events that basically don't mean anything, all the while trying to recapture the fans that walked away because they just couldn't make good comic books anymore. They are hiring some of the worst creatives out there, and even some of the good creators that they are hiring are some of the most polarizing assholes in the entire comic book industry at this point. It's Jim Lee's fault. It's Marie Javin's fault. DC Comics need a leadership change faster than you can possibly imagine, because what they're doing right now, it's not just not working. It's actually driving people off, and it's killing any and all enthusiasm with DC Comics. If you're a part of DC Comics leadership that decided we shouldn't publish Justice League for 2 years, you need to be part of the solution by exiting. If you're part of the DC leadership that decided, let's pause our new initiative for 3 months and do Night Terrors and not release a single ongoing book, you need to be removed for malpractice, for incompetence, for stupidity. If you greenlit Gotham War, you need to be exiting out the door because you have lost connection with the DC buying audience. You do not know what they want, and you are ultimately a part of an enormous problem within comic books, especially at DC Comics at the moment. If you'd like more conversations around DC Comics and some of their ails and why their sales aren't quite where they are. I do want to invite you to come out and check Thinking Critical Patreon. If you like what I'm doing over here on Thinking Critical YouTube and you would like to support us and really back the mission that we've been on for 6+ years at this moment, you can go over to Patreon, support us there, and we want to give back to you with awesome podcasts, 32 hours of brand new podcasts every single month featuring some of your favorite guests on the channel, including Doc, Aaron Sparrow, Jim, myself, obviously. If you haven't checked out Thinking Critical Patreon, there's a link in the video description.